Two people sit in the same meeting, same title, same vote. One has 6 months of savings, one has none. When risk enters the conversation, one leans forward, the other calculates rent in their head. The proposal shifts toward the person who can afford the fallout. No one mentions money, but everyone adjusts to the one who can survive being wrong. The difference is not confidence, it is insulation. The insulated person pauses longer. They challenge assumptions without scanning consequences. They suggest bold timelines without tightening their jaw. Their voice stays level when tension rises. Risk hovers at a distance. For the other person, risk lands immediately. It has weight, it carries a number. So their tone softens. Their objections become questions. Their questions become silence. The room reads this as leadership. Calm reads as authority. Hesitation reads as uncertainty. No one tracks the savings account behind the tone. They track posture. They track tempo. The person who can afford a mistake speaks without contraction. The person who cannot speaks with containment. Containment slows rhythm. Rhythm determines direction. Direction determines who leads. In every shared decision, someone carries less financial fragility. That person sets the speed. They delay when others rush. They push when others hesitate. They frame risk as opportunity. The exposed person frames it as consequence. Exposure changes volume. It changes timing. It changes how long you hold eye contact under pressure. Leadership begins where financial fear ends. Financial fear ends at different numbers for different people. The room does not vote on this hierarchy. It feels it. The one who can survive loss becomes the reference point. The one who cannot adjusts around them. Adjustment looks cooperative. It is calibration around whoever has margin. This pattern did not start in the boardroom. It started the first time money decided who spoke last in your childhood home. Maybe one parent earned more and ended arguments. Maybe one carried the paycheck and carried the final word. You learned early who could afford to be calm. You learned who could afford to push back. The higher earners' tone held steadier, not because they were wiser, because they were less exposed. You watched how financial strain changed posture. The parent worried about bills moved carefully. The one bringing income home moved with certainty. Even silence carried hierarchy. When risk appeared, everyone looked toward the person who could absorb it. That look trained your nervous system. Authority became linked to provision. Calm became linked to margin. So now, when you enter a meeting or a relationship, you are scanning for insulation. You feel who can survive loss. You feel who cannot. The person with cushions signals safety. The person without signals fragility. Your tone adjusts before logic does. If you grew up in scarcity, risk meant instability. Instability meant tension. Your system learned to avoid being the source of financial disturbance. You softened bold moves. You respected the person holding security, not from admiration, from survival. Now, in adulthood, savings replace salary, margin replaces permission. The wiring remains. The one who can absorb impact becomes the axis. The one who cannot becomes careful. Careful people rarely lead first. They wait to see how far they can step without threatening stability. Leadership begins long before the title. It begins the first time money decided who could afford to push the table. When money enters the room, the nervous system thinks in safety. The person with margin does not brace when risk appears. Their breathing stays steady. Their voice does not tighten at uncertainty. The person without margin feels the proposal land in the body first. Chest tightens. Thoughts move faster. The future narrows. Exposure changes how long you tolerate ambiguity. The insulated person lets tension stretch. They sit in silence without rushing to close it. Silence becomes power. The exposed person feels silence as threat. Threat demands resolution. Resolution often means agreement. So the insulated one speaks last. They let others reveal fear first. They test ideas without urgency. The exposed one manages instability in real time. They calculate consequences while pretending to debate strategy. That split attention reduces presence. Reduced presence reduces perceived authority. The room interprets this biologically. Calm equals control. Control equals leadership. No one sees the savings regulating the breath. They see composure. Composure becomes influence. Influence becomes direction. In relationships, it works the same way. The partner who can absorb financial shock tolerates conflict longer. They can risk disagreement without fearing collapse. The other partner senses what is at stake. They choose peace faster, not because they are weaker, because their nervous system protects continuity. Money does not only buy comfort, it buys nervous system range. Range determines who can push. The one who can push without flinching sets the pace. The one who flinches adjusts. At some point, you stop calling it margin. You start calling it leadership. The person who can absorb risk becomes responsible, steady, mature. Identity attaches to insulation. The one with savings sees themselves as decisive. The one without sees themselves as cautious. Over time, those roles harden. If you're exposed, you defer more often. You frame ideas as suggestions. You ask instead of declare. Not because you lack vision, because you feel what failure would cost you. When the insulated person pushes forward, part of you resents it. Another part respects it. Respect grows from security. If you are insulated, you may not notice the shift. You interpret calm as competence. You move first without checking. It feels natural. It feels earned. But it is funded. This shift runs on mechanism. The person with margin can delay commitment. Delay creates leverage. The one without needs momentum. Momentum removes leverage. When deadlines appear, the insulated person can extend them. The exposed person cannot. Extension becomes authority. Urgency becomes compliance. In group settings, the insulated voice sounds measured. Measured voices get space. The exposed voice sounds compressed. Compressed voices get managed. Over time, the group checks with the insulated person first, informally. Informal consultation becomes directional power. Financial cushion changes negotiation posture. The insulated person can walk away without panic. Walking away signals power. The exposed person cannot risk exit. They stay longer. Staying signals need. Need shifts tone. Tone shifts hierarchy. In relationships, this becomes subtle dominance. The partner with margin tolerates disagreement without fearing destabilization. They hold silence. They escalate conflict without fearing collapse. The partner without margin moves to repair faster. Repair becomes reflex. Reflex becomes pattern. Pattern becomes structure. Structure decides who leads pace. The one who can absorb consequence controls tempo. The one who cannot protects continuity. Protecting continuity looks mature, but it transfers authority to whoever can survive the fallout. Over time, the difference in margins stops being situational. It becomes structural. The insulated person speaks first more often. They hold the floor longer. Their ideas stretch without apology. The exposed person trims sentences before finishing them. They soften language before it lands. They release half of what they meant to say. Meetings follow a pattern. Risk appears, eyes shift toward the person who can afford it. Silence stretches. The insulated one decides when it breaks. Breaking silence becomes leadership. The exposed one fills silence too quickly. Filling silence becomes submission. No one names this exchange. It repeats anyway. Opportunities narrow differently. The insulated person volunteers for visibility. Visibility compounds authority. The exposed person weighs exposure against stability. They decline quietly. Declining reduces trajectory. The room reads this as ambition versus hesitation. It rarely reads it as margin versus fragility. In partnerships, the narrowing is quieter. The partner with cushion tolerates long negotiations. They delay decisions without fear. The other partner feels the cost of delay immediately, so they compromise sooner. Compromise becomes habit. Habit reshapes identity. Identity shrinks to fit what feels safe. Eventually, the exposed person stops proposing bold directions. They suggest adjustments instead of pivots. They ask for permission instead of setting tempo. They call it collaboration, but collaboration now orbits one nervous system more than the other. The insulated person may never demand authority. They simply withstand uncertainty longer. Withstanding uncertainty becomes dominance without declaration. The exposed person learns to move within those boundaries. Boundaries feel natural over time. Correct becomes unquestioned. No one votes on who leads. The room senses who can survive collapse. The person with margin sets the pace. They stretch deadlines, they challenge direction, they absorb tension without flinching. It looks like courage, it feels like confidence. It is insulation speaking through posture. The exposed person adapts so